On this episode of Queer Sports, pro athletes can be powerful voices in the fight for social change. But does speaking out come at a cost? How can athletes balance sports and activism? Soccer pro Paige Nielsen, former NFL player R.K. Russell, former WNBA star Ty Young, and sports reporter Izzy Gutierrez weigh in. Then, Allies with Oars takes to the Charles on a mission of inclusion and allyship. And how to harness the competitive instinct for a cause with former gymnast Josh Dixon. Welcome to Queer Sports. I'm Ariel Zimros. We're talking about athlete activism. When we think about athlete activism today, perhaps the most prominent recent example is Colin Kaepernick taking a knee. But athletes have been using their platforms for social justice for as long as we can remember, right? There's John Carlos and Tommie Smith with their Black Power salutes at the 1968 Olympics, Muhammad Ali's refusal to fight in Vietnam, and Billie Jean King fighting for gender equality, to name just a few. RK, why is there such a strong pull towards activism for certain athletes?
I mean, the whole basis of being an athlete is to strive to overcome obstacles and hopefully to be a champion one day. I think it's natural that goes to the causes that we feel passionate about and also the communities that have supported us in getting there. I mean, I wish that more athletes would obviously use their platform, but I think there's a lot of activism that also can go under the radar, whether it be having your own foundation or how you spend your time, how you spend your money, how you use the resources that you have, and even in your own communities with your own families. A lot of guys feel the need to, of course, start there first because that is the first root of support that they had, what impacted them as young athletes.
Right.
It's hard to not then take that same kind of champion mentality, that same kind of competitiveness, that same kind of drive, and not apply it to the things that you're passionate about, the parts that make you who you are, whether it be outside of athletics or inside of athletics.
See, I really appreciate that answer because the way that I worded the question was very specific, right? I said certain athletes because I don't think that all athletes feel this pull, but then you're talking about the athlete mentality and how that plays into it. Is that something that you feel like actually there is a pull towards that for you?
I think sports actually teach us to use our voice. It teaches natural leadership. It teaches all of these things that we can use as athletes to make this world a better place. And quite frankly, I feel like a lot of athletes have the responsibility to do so.
You become powerless to powerful, just like that, right? And so when you become powerful, if you had, whether you were a part of a powerless community or had somebody around you who felt powerless, you now feel like, wow, I have a platform, I can speak up to that. I find that a lot of women in these situations, female athletes, and this is what I want to ask you, Ty, is like, isn't there a natural feeling of going from powerless to powerful as a woman who maybe, in our patriarchal society, just is like, hey, we don't get these opportunities very often. And it feels like women feel even more empowered or willing to be activists when they find that platform or that, that role in life.
Does that resonate?
Of course, and I'm thinking back, even as a child, you're fighting for your dreams and you're fighting to pursue these goals and you have people ahead of you that are paving the way and then you feel you too, should be paving the way for people coming up from behind you, even as a Black woman, a queer woman. The sport, I feel, helps build that confidence. And as you get older, you learn more confidence and have the platform to pave the way and kind of like give back, like you said, with your community and with sports and with that platform. And as you grow, it becomes even bigger.
Paige, do you think athletes have a responsibility to use their platforms to further a cause?
Being an athlete gives us this unearned privilege where our voices are actually heard. And yeah, we do want to fight for more women athlete visibility, for younger kids to see their role models, see their heroes. It's really inspiring to see these kids at our games watching us and understanding that, they could be that too. And representation and TV matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the idea of sort of like in team sports anyway, I'm always curious as to when the teamwork, when it ends. Does it end when you exit the locker room? Does it end when you exit the playing field? the reason I ask that is because, to me, if you are an activist for one of your teammates' causes, that should be just being a good teammate. That should be sort of creating the chemistry and the bonds that you need as a team. And just, to me, I'm just curious what that is like when, let's say, you have an LGBTQ teammate or something, and you want to speak up for that person, or if you have another person that's struggling through something else, like, what is that responsibility like just to another teammate, not just the rest of the world?
Yeah, I think in the football sphere, it's a little, I don't want to say complicated, because it's not, but there's so many people in a locker room and we all come from different backgrounds, we all come from different upbringings, we're all different, sexuality, identity, everything. And, we come in that locker room, and the reason that teamwork works, even on a team with 53 plus people, is because there's an agreement that we all come to for the same goal, to do the same job, and to do our part in that job to the fullest of our ability. I think when you step out of the locker room and when the sphere of competition changes or the goal changes, you need to recommit to a similar goal. I think we saw, even with Colin Kaepernick, that a lot of people might have loved him as a quarterback on that team, but a lot of people didn't champion the same causes that he championed outside of it. But there is, I think, a level of activism and advocacy and allyship that should happen in these teams where organizations, ownership, staff, players should all be on the same page about lots of things. Racism being one of them, homophobia being one of them, uplifting women in ways that we can. Like, these should all be things that we know going into an organization, what type of organization it is, what type of team we're trying to build. And I don't think a lot of teams are doing that. They're not just on, National Coming Out Day, and not just when it fits your motif or your marketing or you can make cool merch out of it. But when, day one in that building to the end, whether you win that championship or not, you need to know what type of organization this is. It needs to be ingrained in your culture. It needs to be ingrained in everyone that wears your insignia or wears your logo or your brand or has the name on their jersey. That is the next step for allyship, for activism in athletes and in any sports league.
Ty, coming from the WNBA, what is your view on what RK just said?
Yeah, I was going to say, even from my experience in the WNBA, I felt we would be on the same page. Even the different teams that I played on, there was always a sisterhood. So whether it was one person that felt a way about something, we all would come to an agreement to fight for something that was bigger than each person individually. Because as you know, even as team together, everyone achieves more, but that was something that we really stood by. This is my sister, we're fighting together. And I think that's how the league was able to have a lot of social change and justice by us coming together for not just equality, for social justice change, for empowerment, for the LGBTQ+. We all stuck together to make a difference.
That's part of the whole team building.
Right, exactly.
When it comes to activism, as you've just mentioned, right, the WNBA is a standout in the social justice movement. In fact, I think the WNBA is the only pro sports league with their own social justice council. Why do you think the WNBA has positioned itself in this way to be such a leader in this fight?
I think with the league, just being a women's league and women having to fight for so much early on, it starts with that. Even with, the Title IX. And like I was saying before, together, we achieve more. And we would have meetings in the locker rooms with our team. And as Minnesota Lynx started it, we see that in the other teams, we talk about it. Okay, well, let us wear T-shirts too. Let us all fight together for the betterment, for not just individuals, but for the league as a whole. And I think that's just how it all started.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, soccer knows this well, right? You guys have worked together for pay parity, done something, frankly, that's, I think a lot of people thought wasn't going to happen. What was the secret sauce in that fight, right? How did you do that?
I think pointing out the blatant misogyny and sexist culture we've had since the beginning. Women have been sexualized and taken advantage of, and the president blatantly said that women cannot perform equal work requiring equal skill based on our physical attributes as speed and strength. And I just want to put this out here. Why do you think people watch March Madness and college football opposed to NFL and NBA? Their skills aren't as good. They're not polished at all as athletes, but people still watch them because, one, they're televised. There's been decades of investment in them. And that argument is just invalid at that point.
Yeah.
And I understand there's people that saying that, if you don't generate revenue, you can't make enough money. Well, we need investment by not only TV, but brands. And quite frankly, investments from corporations. You can do a lot more with less money in women's sports. And there's a lot more room to go with a lot more potential. And this equal pay lawsuit just shed a light on what we need to do as a whole.
Yeah, I work for an organization that's complicit because, we need to be convinced to talk up WNBA, NWSL, and frankly, there are women who probably shouldn't have to be all of the speaking, but like the Sarah Spains of the world who say, hey, can we talk about this? And there's men producers that say, hey, we need to talk about this. And in the end, they a lot of the times decide, well, the audience doesn't want to hear it. Well, sometimes you've got to force them to hear it because they don't know what they want to hear or see yet.
Right.
And so we've had millions of examples. I mean, F1 racing. I never would have thought I'd be an F1 fan, but it's been inundated over the last 3 years for me. And I'm just like, wow, look at me. I'm watching F1 racing now. And it's just like, you can absolutely do that with any sport.
I honestly can't believe it,
right?
but I am too, absolutely.
Yeah, I was gonna feed off of him a little bit, and you see this change starting to slowly change, right? We always want change faster than it actually comes.
Yeah.
But there's a survey, a report that came out of YouGov saying that actually 44% of the age group of 18 to 24 prefer to watch female sports. And they still aren't televised near as much as men's sports. And the other side of that was only 16% of 55 and over preferred women's sports. So we see a future coming. Mm-hmm. And everyone has daughters, and they want to put them in sports because of all of these activists, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Like Billie Jean King. Their daughter might not be on the tennis court if it weren't for her in pay equity. And I hope that our world sees the potential in investing in women and fight for us and with us, not just watch it happen.
Yeah, I love that. All right, we'll be right back. We're talking about athletes and activism. Let's discuss women's soccer for a moment, right? Recently, women's soccer released an investigation into coaches where they showed widespread harassment and abuse of players that happened over a long period, right? It had been going on for years. In response, the players of the Portland Thorns and the Houston Dash made their feelings known through a mid-game protest where they demanded and then received the ouster of one top executive. Paige, do you think protesting is the best way to shine a light on this kind of abuse?
I honestly was heartbroken at some of the things I read at the report, and I couldn't be prouder of the players for standing up for minimum protection rights. And sport is supposed to be a safe place to play and inspire youth. And when we don't have institutions in place to protect us, we had to do something. Yeah. And our league was the first league to actually stop a game in the middle of the game at the 6th minute and come in a circle and stand together because, we deserved better as athletes.
Yeah. When athletes protest, that is not always well received by the governing bodies, right? How can leagues, governing bodies in sport better support their athletes when they are choosing to engage in a peaceful protest?
Well, for one, I think in general, even before they engage in a peaceful protest, I think these organizations have to think less like a business and more like, I don't know what you want to call it, a family even, just an organization that is together. Because as we just mentioned, this is not just a business. It's not people, if you succeed, you're going to make more money. Like you have people influenced by the product you're putting out there, the people who are working for you, okay? So you can't just be a bottom line business. You can't. And I think some of the better organizations in sports are more of that. They have a culture about them. They care about the people first and foremost. When the Miami Heat had this protest on Trayvon Martin and the organization supported it, and it was a national moment.
Yeah. And
it resonated. And I think the more the organizations support the players, like I said, the more the players will continue to be activists and the more, the cycle will continue. So absolutely, organizations matter.
I kind of feel like I know the answer for the NFL, unfortunately, but when it comes to the WNBA, like, we've seen various actions that WNBA players have taken, for instance, like wearing a t-shirt with BG on it, right? Brittany Griner. When you have taken part in these kinds of demonstrations, did you feel supported by the league?
Yes, because we always did it collectively. Even when we go back to, say, Minnesota Lynx, their whole team, started with the t-shirts. So I feel like at that point you have to.
Right.
Because it's always a difference when it's one person than when it's a whole collective. And I feel like the league did back us for that. And then as time went on, and even in the bubble when the players were for Breonna Taylor, I think it always makes a difference when you're advocating for something when it's a collective effort.
Right.
And when you have players sticking together, there's not much, like, what can the league do?
Right, it's less risky.
Yeah.
That said, like, activism, especially on an individual basis, isn't without its risks, right? Colin Kaepernick, many believe that he was pushed out of the NFL because of his activism. From a sort of NFL culture perspective, is it worth it?
I mean, from an NFL culture perspective, I think a lot of guys would think not, but that's also the difference between what Izzy's saying, what Ty is saying, what everyone here is saying. There's a difference between an organization that works and functions like a business, an organization that works and functions like a family or like a team. There's a reason Colin Kaepernick and the 49ers at the time, the execs, didn't have a conversation, that he wasn't in power, that he wasn't backed. It's because business-wise, it didn't work. It didn't make sense for them. And, guys took it upon themselves to do their own protests, whether it be kneeling during the national anthem or whatever they chose. But it was never uniform because the thoughts, the feelings, and the culture was not uniformed on these decisions. We are still having conversations in the NFL about racism and about social justice.
Yep.
I mean, I remember being in the Buccaneers locker room when everything was happening, and management or ownership had a meeting with us. And one of the first questions of the meeting was, okay, well, what are you protesting? What is the actual problems? Because we've heard this and we've heard that, and I'm like, they're all problems. Mm-hmm. These are all issues that we face. Yeah, it's not just. And then the second question was, well, what do we need to do so that you don't feel a need to protest anymore?
So what do we need to do so that you don't
so we can
take
stop
a
you
knee?
from protesting?
Okay.
Yeah. So
all right.
so this organization, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in this 2-question, 10-minute meeting at this time, are going to solve racism.
Well,
and
what they're
solve
demonstrating is that
social
what they demonstrated in that moment is that they had absolutely no grasp on the problem, right? Because you're totally not getting it if that's what you're asking me about.
So it comes with risk because you have people who, one, don't get it. You have people who, two, if it doesn't make dollars to them, it doesn't make sense. And then three, also within a league as big as ours and varied people, we don't have a lot of the same, and I'm just talking about social injustice and Black Lives Matter and the rights of people of color at this point. We're not even getting to the layers of LGBTQ plus advocacy, the fight against homophobia, all these things. And when you have our league, majority players Black, majority coaches are not Black, majority of ownership is not Black, there's just so much from a football standpoint that you do risk because there's still so much change and growth that needs to happen. But if you don't do it, if you don't have that fight in you, if you don't clear that with your own conscience, then what was the point? But we need to make progress.
Coming up, former champion gymnast Josh Dixon challenges his fellow athletes to get uncomfortable and speak out.
I'm here with my guest, Josh Dixon, a former champion gymnast, an activist for diversity and inclusion, and a co-owner of the Chicago Red Stars women's soccer team. Josh, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing well. It's been a great year, and I'm excited to be here.
You've talked a lot in the past about being the only one, right? The only out athlete in your sport or the only person of color. How has that shaped you as an athlete activist?
It has definitely shaped the activism headspace. When I'm doing these things, it's so much more than just me. It is about representing different constituencies along the way. And whether that is the LGBTQ community, the community of people of color, whether that's Black or Asian, whether it's the adopted youth constituency, great. it's just kind of it's been fun to understand and to introspect my own story and know that as I go, it's so much further beyond just myself doing cool stuff.
You have spoken out politically. You've spoken out in 2015. I believe there was an anti-LGBTQ law in Indiana.
Yeah.
And you spoke out against that. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience, what that was like for you?
If sports is supposed to be an echo chamber for inclusion and social responsibility and doing good, where things are held really makes a difference. And especially different stakeholders like myself at the time. That is something that comes into play when you're in a state that unfortunately is not as inclusive as what the gymnastics community stands for and has done.
How should sports best support athletes when they decide that, hey, no, I do need to speak out? Like how can they learn to speak out effectively?
I would say to the issues that you want to speak out on, for me it was issues of inclusion, race in sports, gender equity in sports. Just do the hard introspection exercise of, like, how did you get to where you are? Why would you want to support people that helped you get to this position of influence as an athlete? Kind of back to your question of, like, how should you do this? Ask questions, educate yourself, embrace being uncomfortable around topics that you're not a subject matter expert in, and learn to position it as you would. I want to be competitive in this space. Now it's just not basketball or gymnastics or football. Right. I want to be competitive and talking about why voting matters. Kind of breaking it down that way might be a little bit easier for athletes who are nervous around speaking up on anything but their sport.
I like that. I like harnessing that competitiveness to allow them to harness it towards activism. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's like such an apt comparison because it is your job to be made uncomfortable every day because you know that you're going to be better on the other side of it. Now just enter a different subject and you have the same tools and skill sets to make that happen.
You are now the co-owner of a women's soccer team. You've invested in a women's soccer team in Chicago. And one of the things that I've heard from you is that it sort of opened up your eyes to a certain kind of inequity, right? The inequity of the business of sports.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about that?
It was a tremendous honor to have the opportunity to join the Chicago cap table, become informed around the NWSL even existing, learning more about soccer. The women are expected to win gold medals in World Cups, whereby the men, not so much. And to learn about all of the inequities that exist at the athlete level, whether it's cleat allocations, salaries, stipends, nutrition, performance, everything that goes into being a great athlete. It's like, oh, whoa, okay. First, that's not equal. So now I'm in a position to help contribute capital and resources to level that up.
I'm curious, looking at women's gymnastics and men's gymnastics, there's not just a difference in terms of the amount of flourish that women are either asked to do or whatnot. There's also a difference in terms of the events, right? Do you think that's still necessary in 2023?
I'll start on the artistry. I think that's interesting that you mentioned because, like with floor, like very clearly women have music, guys don't. There's a different kind of artistic flair or expression that we've seen kind of more welcomed existence on the men's side of things now. That's kind of the entertainment value of it all, if you were to look at it that way. In terms of the events themselves, that's interesting because there's a few different ways I can look at this. Like, guys can do beam. Do they want to? Probably not. Like, it's hard. Beam is hard. But then we've seen now cases where women are doing easier what some of the guys can't do or have even tried to do, namely Simone Biles. Some of the stuff she's done on vault and floor, like I could only do off of a mini trampoline into a foam pit. And some of the best male gymnasts in the world can't do what some of the best female gymnasts in the world do, and vice versa. There are limits to where you can push yourself physically, and on which apparatus you want to try that, by which gender. totally up for grabs, but it's a valid question and great point of conversation when it comes down to actually competing it.
I think there's part of me that wonders what would it take for men's gymnastics to get a little bit more attention. And I'm wondering if it's the events themselves, if it's a little bit more flourish, if it's...
Yeah. Well, first of all, it would take the men to podium. The women have dominated forever. There's no secret about that. And as an athlete or as a gymnast, male or female, your job is to make the impossible look effortless. So there is already a set unrelatability around the sport, but an attraction and intrigue as to what the heck are they doing and how are they doing that. But yeah, definitely on the men's side, we need to better educate an audience, whether it's better storytelling of the athletes, so I can root for them more than whatever vault they're doing or whatever ring routine that they're performing. Like, I'm rooting for this guy because of this, and this. Maybe that's outside of the arena.
Josh, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Even if you're not a queer athlete, allyship is another great way athletes can show their support for a cause. College wrestler and straight ally Hudson Taylor received a lot of media attention when he stuck an LGBTQ equality sticker on his gear. Are the people you're playing with day to day, those cis straight athletes that you're playing with, are they offering their support and speaking out? Like, Paige, do you have any experience with this?
Recently, Angel City, our organization has been amazing. A lot of my teammates want to fight for other people that may not have the same opportunity or feel as comfortable being who they are. And our league in general has made huge waves with that. Yeah, there's been a lot of help and a lot of allyship.
Yeah. When you have other straight players on your team, because there are straight players in soccer.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah.
You feel supported by them.
Yes, I do. It's not a weird conversation anymore. I mean, there are people that may not be homophobic. I don't think there's always black and white lines when we talk about this. There's a lot of gray area. And I want people to know that it's okay to ask questions.
Yes.
And there's different lenses where you see homosexuality. You can see it as a choice, which the people that oppose it usually see it as a choice, or you can see it as their identity, which is how I feel, which is how a lot of people feel, and it's the truth. I wouldn't choose to be gay because of all the rights against me and how hard and uncomfortable it was coming out. And so I know a lot of our teammates want to help the teammates that don't see it as an identity to help them see it that way. I've seen it.
Really, you've seen actual change, people changing their minds?
I see conversations, and it starts there.
You mentioned Hudson. That was the whole crazy thing to him. Like, I wrestled you yesterday, but today, because I'm wearing this sticker, you think that I might be gay, so now you're not gonna wrestle me? What's the difference between yesterday and today? And that level of homophobia was just driving him up a wall, and he's just like, well, I'm gonna do something about this, and he just started wearing it, and then created this whole athlete ally situation, and that's what it is. Like, that's how strong it is of a feeling of homophobia until you just sort of break those barriers. And so, I think Hudson is doing a phenomenal job, and I think that type of allyship is pretty simple, frankly.
I think we're seeing it more with athletes, expanding their platform outside of sports, like maybe LeBron James, or like someone who has, who are starting podcasts, who are doing shows, who are making productions and developments and telling their story. Talks like these, where you're expanding the scope of not just what it means to be an athlete, but what it means to be a man. Then Dwayne Wade and his family, and being who he is, and supporting his trans daughter, and being an amazing, not just basketball player, but amazing father, an amazing role model, and just a good person. And it's, he's not, when we step back, and if we looked at his family as just him and his children, it might not seem that groundbreaking. But because he has a trans daughter, now it seems like he's doing something so beyond, when really he's just being a good dad.
Yeah. It is huge, right? There's that, for a lot of people, could end up making a very, very, very big difference. And it is his family, so I hesitate to even call it allyship, because he's just taking care of his daughter. But it is really beautiful to see a cis man of his stature speak out in support of a trans family member.
I think the allyship comes in when him and his wife, when they talk about their growth is that they've allowed their daughter to teach them. I think that's the part of it that all allyship can take and piggyback off of, is allowing people of the experience and of the community, of the culture, to lead you and to teach you, and to your immediate reaction not be no or I know best, or just, but to listen with open ears and an open heart and to be led.
Let me just say, for those who don't believe that people can change, I've known Dwayne Wade since he was 22, 23 years old in 2003. He was not this person then. He has evolved into this person. He has grown. He has become, when I came out publicly, he sent me a direct message. It was amazing. It made my heart melt. It was so great to see that from him. But the person he is now, like everything that he knows now, everything he believes now, everything that he understands now from his daughter, he didn't know these things. He learned it from his child and somewhat from his wife, who's just been a lot more sort of exposed to that world. And now you see him, and he projects as this perfect parent and is doing all these great things. And he came from a non-perfect person, you know what I mean? That is the type of change that we love to see from everybody. You don't have to experience it necessarily. Maybe you can just relate to somebody else who experienced it and gained from it. And so it's just so disheartening when you just get people digging in and just wanting to fight when really they're just trying to live.
When you're a queer athlete, is it your responsibility to extend your hand to a player who might, harbor bigoted views about who you are? Is it your responsibility to do that, or should it be someone else?
I've thought about this for a while, and at the beginning, I didn't feel like it was my responsibility to really hold. I was like, I'm gonna live my life, be positive, be open ears, always listen, try and be the best human I can be.
Yeah.
And until I started sharing more of my life with my wife, Jen, who's beautiful in every way, I didn't understand the impact that it could have on someone. I'm getting DMs, texts, people that want to take pictures with me all the time with their wife, or it's a gay couple that want to say like, hey, thank you for just being you.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand how big of an impact that I could have until now.
Ty, you haven't had to extend that hand.
Not in that aspect, but to other people I have, like little kids. As you have that platform, you're a role model, and you have little kids that look up to you, and you try to teach them to know that it's okay to be yourself. And that's one thing that I try to stand on, and being my authentic self is to reaching out to those kids. You have kids who get picked on, who get teased, and are committing suicide, and you don't want someone taking their life because they're afraid to be who they are. Yeah. So it's also like, stand even with Dwayne. Like, he's loving his kid. He's getting backlash from loving his kid. And you have parents who are not there for their kids, who are afraid, and they feel they need that community, need our community to support them.
Next, we're heading to Cambridge to meet with a rowing team that has one simple message. Everyone is welcome on the water, regardless of gender identity and sexual orientation. The Head of the Charles is an annual rowing competition in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And this year, thanks in part to allies with Oars, it was a little more queer-friendly. Take a look.
We are at the Super Bowl of rowing. We're on the Charles River in Boston, Massachusetts. It's the 2022 edition, and this is predicted to be the biggest one yet.
The start sequence for 3 days of racing, where we had over 11,000 competitors in over 2,400 homes across 72 races. Thanks for coming.
Historically, rowing is associated with prep culture.
Up an inch, ready, up.
Each American university boasts of one sport that ranks in prestige above all others. Rowing is the most respected of all athletics.
It's also typically seen as a very expensive sport, and in some cases it still is. It's still very private, still very elite.
You can't really get on the water unless you join a club, unless you're financially able to buy a single and row by yourself. There's a big push right now to diversify club rowing.
The goal of the Allies with Oars crew is to fly the flag of inclusion for LGBTQ plus rowers.
It was started by Willow, who's our bow seat in the boat. she also started Strokes in Transition, which was for trans athletes. And then this Allies with Oars is the allies component of that.
I am very proud to be an openly trans rower, and I hope to inspire future trans rowers to be fully themselves.
We knew we wanted to have everybody represented, maybe a whole boat of queers, but how it turned out actually is much better that we've got some allies mixed in with people who are openly identifying and flying the flag of being queer.
Getting in a boat with rowers who have not rowed together is different than getting into a boat with rowers who have rowed together a lot. You've got to somehow build trust. These rowers have never met me. They have to just say, we're in your hands, go.
Okay, so you guys,
this is just a really awesome moment. This is the first time we're all getting together. I'm excited because I made shirts. I'm gonna show you mine and then...
Okay.
Thank you. Wear them with pride.
This looks like a strong crew.
This looks like a fun crew. For me, I find it's important to be an ally to the LGBT community because they've become my family and they've become my community over the last 12 years. I can't imagine not stepping in to help wherever I can. Teamwork is so incredibly important to rowing.
We're rigging, yes. So the riggers is what holds the oars out over the boat. Yes. So we're just attaching them all to the shell itself.
You can't be doing your own thing in one of these boats. It is synchronized more than anything. You have to be able to make adjustments to make sure that you are rowing exactly in time with the rowers in front of you. And when that doesn't happen, things can really fall apart. So it's really the ultimate team sport. As a race coxswain, I'm gonna be helping to steer the boat and really giving the crew cues and motivation all the way down the course. The way that I envision our race start going is 5 to build pressure, 5 to build rating, to a 30 for a high 20 shift. Coming through Elliott, guys, this is where I want us to really, really commit to speed and power.
Allies on 3. 1, 2, 3. Allies! This particular group has taken that moment and that really special community, and now we are stepping into the advocacy and ally platform. I feel like it's a little risky in some ways, but we'll see how it goes.
Tie in on the water, please. Arms only and rope. From the basin of the Charles, we have to get to the start line.
What I would want out of an ally is that I am myself first, I am a rower next, and that's really not a big deal.
Not really anything special, just treat me like a normal human and support me, and I'm no different than anyone else. Just had a different way of getting here.
DeWolf Rowing Club, full pressure DeWolf, and row, Sarah, grade 8, row.
Allies, go! Allies, go!
Rope. 50% here, 50% on the next one. Hold for 10 right here to get going. This one with pressure. In, out, good job. Long, good. We got overlap with CRI now. I want to walk on them. Ready? In 2, we're going to take a 5 to take seats. 1, 2, here we go. 5, silent. 1, quiet, yeah. 2, quiet, yeah. 3, 4, 5. Now let's get away from their blades. Let's take 5 to clear their bow ball. Let's go 5. 1, send it. 2, go. 3, good. I want to get past that bow ball. 3 strokes. Let's take it. Atomic's still right there. We're reeling them in. We've got open water now on CRI. Just took a boat on the Charles. Nicely done. Willow on this one. 2, 3, good. Excellent. I got my point. Rest to the row. Make it clean.
Allies!
Woo! That right there made my day. That perfect. Woo! I can talk. Yes!
You were so jacked. I I don't think it's fair to assume that an ally is completely comfortable and completely woke about queers. It might be a parent who's struggling with a child that's just come out, or they might be coming out themselves. On the flip side of that, I can't say that every queer person should feel responsible for educating allies. We're not the poster child for the gays, and we shouldn't be. We can only share our experience. And so when you create community, you create space without that heaviness of this obligation to educate or advocate. I felt really emboldened by the experience. You can feel that trust. When you don't have that, boats don't go fast. When you have that, boats go fast.
Thank you so much to all of you for joining me today. This has been so great. Before I let you go, I have one more question for you. If you could have a meal with any activist, dead or alive, who would you have dinner with?
My answer is 2 people. It's Venus Williams and Harvey Milk. I think Venus gives me so much information and just from background and just growing up and playing tennis in Compton and everything that she had to fight through to, equal pay for women, to what she saw her sister, an even brighter star right after her, to everything. Like, I think Venus is just story after story, and I love her. And then Harvey, and she can tell me about Billie Jean King. The other answer was going to be Billie Jean King because when you said Dead or Alive, I switched it to Harvey Milk. But I can just get my Billie Jean King answers from Venus Williams, and then I'm going to Harvey Milk because it's just one of the LGBTQ ambassadors, and and obviously the way he passed away and the way he was assassinated, his whole life is just one of power to me, and so I would love to speak to them both.
I have one, Jackie Robinson.
Yeah.
From sports, from everything that he's did to pave the way, and just how his mentality was like, no matter what, I'm not backing down. I'm here. You're gonna have to deal with it, and that's just inspired me even to this day when I watch, like movies and things on him. It still inspires me, and it gives me chills what he had to go through.
Yeah,
I have 2. I have a lot. Bubba Wallace. The way he had to fight individually as a Black man to ban the Confederate flag, I imagine that could be isolating, and he didn't care. I love his responses to everything. He's like, I don't care, like, this has to go. And I've never been as isolated as that, and I want to understand, like, what gave him the drive to be exactly who he is and have that fight. And then also Simone Biles, because she's a badass.
Good one.
And in gymnastics also, very isolating, a lot of pressure, a lot of eyes on you. And
she's almost a brand new activist too, right?
Yeah,
new to the game.
She is, and she's young.
Yeah.
But the
effective
and the amount of courage she has is something that I admire.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, RK?
All right, I'm going with Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like there's so much that happened that we have yet to hear about, just behind closed doors and within his team and his organization, his own personal life. Just such a captivating person to me, and especially obviously our similar fields in football. And then I'm gonna go Tupac. It was hard to pick one person, but Tupac for me growing up was like the first Black masculine man that I saw that had a point of view and wasn't afraid to express it, that wrote poetry, that was just
talk about his feelings.
Yeah, that was embodied really everything like a whole person should embody, and still like have respect from everyone. And then if I get an alternate, I want Bob Marley to come in. My family's Jamaican.
Yeah. Let's just make it a group dinner. Yeah. We'll bring everybody to one house.
Get everybody in there.
Maybe
want to get in on his dinner? Yeah, okay, cool.
Pull in a chair.
Cool. We'll make it happen. All right. Thank you to everyone who joined us. See you next time.